What's up guys, this is Zach with Top Tech Nation, and today we're going to be continuing our Burning Shadows coverage with another deck profile, and that is going to be Greninja BREAK. Now, if you haven't checked out our other videos, be sure to do that. We've been covering Burning Shadows decks for the last couple weeks now. We've done decks like Darkrai, Golisopod, things like that, Gardevoir, so be sure to check those out. But we are going to be looking at Greninja today, and mainly because, the going rates for the cards right now are pretty outrageous. I'm in the process of trying to get some post-rotation stuff like Gardevoir, Volcanion stuff, but it is kind of difficult because the prices are a little bit too high in the public trade stuff right now. But no worries there. In the next few days, I should be able to do that. I'm really excited that all these cards are on PTCGO finally. I don't have to print proxies or anything. So a little more high quality coverage for you guys. I can actually zoom in on the cards and give you card explanations. So definitely stoked about that. And I am actually in the process of applying for a locked account. So a lot of times Pokemon, they'll actually partner up with a lot of YouTubers and give them these professional accounts with everything unlocked. And so that's really nice for people that want to cover these older formats like Legacy and Expanded, where the cards are normally just a bit too expensive or just unobtainable. So, I mean, hopefully I can do that for you guys, and that way I can provide a lot more coverage. But for now, we are going to be covering Greninja BREAK today. And there is a lot to cover here because, as you can see, this deck looks radically different than just a couple months ago, or even just a month ago at the North American International Championships. As you know, I did play Greninja, so if you are interested in the pre-rotation deck, you can check that out. We did a tournament report recently, but this deck is a little bit different because you have to play thicker counts of stuff. The supporter counts are a little bit different, and there's even Tapu Fini in here. So let me go ahead and go over that. So this is a post-rotation deck, which means that it is a breakthrough on deck versus a Primal Clash on deck. A lot of the cards we're used to, like Versus Seeker, have kind of rotated out. Trainer's Mel, Teammates, things that Greninja could use to make it a little bit faster and more competitive. They are rotated, so it had to make a pretty big adjustment, but I think the deck is still very, very competitive, and I am going to be explaining these cards here. So starting off, we have our Greninja line. We are still playing a 4-4-4-3 line. A lot of people have actually speculated about playing a fourth Greninja BREAK simply because with something like Acerola or Guzma, you can actually pull off a triple giant water shuriken. Now, I will say this is probably going to be taking a lot to pull off, even if you have 4 Greninja BREAK in the deck. So I think 3 is fine, especially since we're playing Rescue Stretcher and a lot of cards to search it out. But if you think a fourth one might be good, you could definitely swap it in, and we'll be talking about some cards that are kind of interchangeable with the deck. But if you're not familiar with the deck, Greninja BREAK, the reason it's so good, not only because it's a one prize attacker with 170 HP, but also because of this giant water shuriken ability. So if it's active, once per turn, you can discard a water energy from your hand and put 60 damage anywhere on your opponent's board. So that's already really, really good. But the fact that it is free retreat and that the ability stacks makes it really good. So for example, I can Giant Water Shuriken to something, I can retreat out, Giant Water Shuriken again, and I haven't even attacked for the turn. So I could attach an energy, use Moonlight Slash for 80 and do a whopping 200 damage for 1 energy. So really strong. And with a Choice Band, that means it's going to be doing 230 damage, which is enough to knock out something like Gardevoir GX. And going forward, that is the deck to beat. It's going to be a really strong deck, really consistent. We're going to have our post-rotation version up in the next couple days, assuming I can trade for some Gardevoirs or borrow some Gardevoirs. So hopefully that'll happen. But yeah, I mean, Greninja is really strong going forward, and because it's a break, it can use the stage 2's attack. So that's what I'm referring to when I say Moonlight Slash. And Shadow Stitching is also a very strong attack. It only does 40 damage, but combined with a Choice Band and or the Giant Water Shurikens, it does a lot of damage, and it's shutting off all of your opponent's abilities. So we are still in a heavily reliant ability format. So Tapu Lele's Wonder Tag, people are going to be playing 3 or 4 of those in most decks. Gardevoir is a really strong Pokemon thanks to that ability. Volcanion, Metagross, Vikavolt, pretty much every deck is reliant on abilities. So that's why Greninja is just really, really strong here. Now, at first glance, you might be asking yourself, how in the world am I going to get this, essentially, what is a stage 3 out to play? And that's a pretty good question. We do play Rare Candy, but that's not really the main way to get it out. We have this Frogadier that has this attack called Water Duplicates. So it lets you search your deck for up to 3 Frogadier. You're basically bypassing the evolution rule where you have to wait a turn, and you can put them directly on the bench. So it opens up for some interesting plays. Like if I start off with Froakie, I can play Tapu Lele, search out for Wally, and then I can get a turn 1 Water Duplicates and get those Frogadier on the board and get everything set up. So Water Duplicates, in my opinion, is really the bread and the butter of the deck. Rare Candy is great and all, but it's really a secondary means to evolve those Froakie. We're really focused on getting the Water Duplicates, and if we get that done in the first couple turns of the game, we are pretty much good to go as far as competing with our opponent. Now, as far as our other Pokemon go, we are playing 2 Tapu Lele. I played 1 at Nationals, had a lot of success with it because I could pull off the turn 1 Wally, I could pull off teammates out of nowhere or Lysander. I think going ahead it's good. People say it's a liability, but the thing is, if they have to bring it up and knock it out, they haven't touched my Greninjas, and so they still have to knock out 4 Greninjas. So in my opinion, that's worth the trade-off. In the meantime, I'm probably going to be using Shurikens and knocking out Pokemon for easy prizes. So honestly, it's just kind of teasing your opponent, or baiting your opponent. If they want to bring it out and knock it out, that's fine. But either way, you kind of benefit. So I think Tapu Lele is really good in the deck. We're also playing a 2-2 Starmie count. Now, some people have kind of been playing a 1-1 line, but I think now that VS Seeker's gone, we can't use Fisherman as much as we want to. And as you can see, this deck isn't even playing Fisherman because I don't really think it needs it. We need something a bit more consistent. So I think that Starmie really fits the bill. I think a 2-2 line is great, and Staryu has free retreat, which means that if you start with Staryu, you can still pull off that turn 1 Wally. So I really like the Staryu. But Starmie has a Space Beacon ability, and it says you can discard a card from your hand and put 2 basic energy cards into your hand. So I can discard something I don't really need that turn and get 2 water energy back, up to 2 water energy. So really, really strong to pull off that giant water shuriken. And then concluding the list is something that I am initially testing since the set is brand new, and that's going to be Tapu Fini-GX. Now, what I love about Tapu Fini-GX, definitely not Hydro Shot. This, that attack isn't really good in this deck because it needs 3 energy. There's no way we're ever going to power that up. What I like about it is the GX attack, Tapu Storm. So shuffle your opponent's active Pokemon and all cards attached to it into their deck. So this could be really strong, for example, with Guzma or Acerola, for example. So what we could do is Giant Water Shuriken once or twice, go into the Tapu Fini and Tapu Storm the active. So we're putting damage on the bench and then Tapu Storming the active Pokemon. So if it's something that they've worked really hard to get set up, so maybe like a Metagross GX or a Gardevoir GX, for example, maybe they're running low on rare candies, they've kind of used their resources out, we can Tapu Storm, and it's just for a single energy, so it's going to really disrupt our opponent there. And also is the fact that Tapu Fini has no weakness and it's got only a 1 retreat cost, so definitely goes with the theme of the deck where you just have to retreat out and you can start using giant water shurikens. I don't know. I think this is an interesting inclusion of the deck. I will be testing it a lot more. I will update the list, but I think Tapu Fini is an interesting addition that you should look out for, and I think it'll be a pretty good card in Greninja going forward. So that'll cover the Pokemon. As far as the trainer cards, for our supporters here, we're playing a similar line to what we played back in the Guardians Rising format, but we have lost some things. We've lost Lysander, we've lost teammates, possibly Skyla if you played that in your Greninja deck, but the 4 Sycamore and the 4 N remain. I think they're great staples and set up a very consistent deck. I think every deck should be playing 4 Sycamore and 4 N going ahead in this Burning Shadows format, but we're also playing things like Wally to make sure we get the turn 1 water duplicates. That's really the main purpose of that card. And we're also playing 2 Guzma and 1 Acerola. Now Guzma is really good because, like I said, you can pull off those plays where you essentially get a a triple giant water shuriken. Now, it may not happen too often, but in general, I think it's really strong. It's kind of a replacement for Lysander, and we're playing 2 because there are no, or I should say that VS Seeker has rotated. So because of that, we do have to thicken our counts a little bit. And finally, Acerola. I love this card in Greninja because you can set up some really wacky plays where you heal off a Greninja completely and scoop it up, and then you just bring in another one. It's another way to get that triple giant water shuriken off, so really strong, and it's really disruptive in the sense that it's a switching card, that it's a healing card, so I think it's definitely worth it since we're playing a couple Tapu Lele anyway. Now, as far as our item cards go, this is a little bit different than your typical Greninja build here. We have 4 Ultra Ball and 3 Timer Balls. Now, I will say that Greninja lost a pretty big part of the deck when Dive Ball rotates, but I think Ultra Ball and Timer Ball are very strong cards. In my Internationals build, I think I played 4 Ultra Ball and 3 Dive Ball, and I had 0 issues setting up. I wasn't playing Brooklet Hill or anything like that, just 4 Ultra Ball, 3 Dive Ball. Didn't really have a problem with it because once you get past the first couple turns of the game, you have your Froakies out, you've evolved them and everything, so I don't really think it's necessary. I think the reason Dive Ball was so strong was the fact that it was a guaranteed search. I didn't have to discard, it was a free search, it got me what I needed, and in this deck, Timer Ball is essentially doing the same thing. I mean, it's getting Frogadier, Greninja, the Break, and Starmie off of Timer Ball, and you know, some of the time you might actually flip 2 heads and be able to search out multiple Pokemon. So it's a really strong play when you can flip 2 heads on Timer Ball and get double Frogadier, double Greninja Break, something like that. Maybe even a Greninja and a Starmie together. So you can see the different possibilities. And you know, 3 out of 4 times you are going to be hitting at least 1 heads. So you know, if you don't like Timer Ball, if you're kind of reluctant on playing it, you could definitely play Evo Soda. I think it survives because it was printed in Generations, I believe. So I mean, that's another option, but I think Timer Ball is very strong. We're also going to be playing 3 Rare Candy. Again, that is a secondary way to evolve our Froakies. Typically, people played maybe 2 going in the Guardians Rising format, going into Internationals, but I think 3 is a little more consistent, especially in this format going ahead. We're losing things like Versus Seeker, so we can't really rely on that too much to get something like Skyla or Teammates, so I do think a thicker Rare Candy is needed. We're also playing 2 Field Blower. That's mainly for the Garbotox and Garbodor. So in case they shut off our abilities, we play Field Blower and re-enable those abilities. It's also good against something like Choice Band or Floatstone. Choice Band isn't really doing anything to Greninja, but if they Guzma something up, such as Tapu Lele or Tapu Fini, we do want to prevent that extra damage. Really important. And then finally, we're also going to be playing Rescue Stretcher and Choice Band. Choice Band is going to enable you to have that crazy good math we talked about, where you can do up to like 230 damage a turn, which is enough to knock out pretty much anything in the game, especially Gardevoir, which is probably going to be the best deck looking forward. And Rescue Stretcher in general is just a great way to get back Pokemon, whether it be putting 3 of them back in the deck or just 1 back into your hand in a pinch. So I think this is a bit better than Super Rod, simply because there is that option of getting it back to the hand. So you don't have to worry so much about having to discard a break early on, because Rescue Stretcher is a way to get that back in the hand really quickly. And finally, concluding the list here, we're playing 9 energy, we're playing 6 water, and 3 splash. So as you know, Splash Energy doesn't really count as a water energy until it comes down, so you can't giant water shuriken with it, but is a great way to recover your Pokemon if they're about to get knocked out. Just keep in mind, it can't be attached to anything except a water Pokemon, which in this case is just Tapu Lele-GX. So if Tapu Lele does get stuck in the active, or you start with it, just be sure to retreat out with the water energy. But you know, as I said, we shouldn't really have a problem with that. We're playing 6, which is a pretty healthy count, and I think with a 2/2 Starmie line, I think you shouldn't really have any problems drawing into those. But that is going to wrap up my take on Greninja, guys. This is a post-rotation list for the 2017-2018 Breakthrough on standard format. Just taking a look at it at first glance, I think it's really strong because it doesn't really lose anything. I mean, it loses VS Seeker, it loses maybe Teammates or Dive Ball, but honestly, these cards aren't a make or break for the deck. The only real counter to the deck would be like your heavy grass decks like Tapu Bulu. Obviously, the Giratina promo, that's going to be a bit of a concern. So if Greninja is starting to become popular at tournaments, if it does well, expect people to play more of that kind of stuff. Now, the Giratina promo, something you could counter it with is Alolan Muck. And Alolan Muck's ability actually is essentially a silent lab, so it shuts off the ability of basic Pokemon. So things like Tapu Lele-GX, Volcanion EX. So that might be an option against Giratina looking ahead, but I will have to test that a little bit more. But I'm definitely leaning towards that type of build. And if you were to take a couple cards out of here for that, you know, maybe the Tapu Fini and something else, but I do think they're really interesting plays. I think Tapu Fini's GX attack is really intriguing, and I think it could be good in this type of deck. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump into a game I recently played on Pokemon Trading Card Game Online and see the deck in action. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and get started here. So looks like I start with a Staryu, not that bad. I have a Tapu Lele and a Water Energy in my hand, so if I have a Froakie, I could actually pull off a turn 1 Wally into the Frogadier, and I get an Ultra Ball, so I am going first. I get an Ultra Ball, so I could actually Ultra Ball into the Froakie and Tapu Lele into Wally. Now, if I was going second, this would be huge because I would have a turn 1 Water Duplicates, but not in this case. I am going to have to, you know, just kind of settle for the Froakie. I'm not even sure if I really want to use the Wally, or if I'd rather just kind of take my chances and maybe get another Froakie to be safe. And I think that's probably the more, you know, the better play here, just to make sure I do hit multiple Froakie. So I get a pretty good hand here. I've got Splash Energy and everything. I've got the Ultra Ball, so if I want a Frogadier next turn or a Tapu Lele for a supporter, I can do that. So I'm just going to pass. Staryu has free retreat, and I'm not really fearing this Staryu getting knocked out here. I think he's going to be more concerned with getting set up. I see a Cosmoem and a Beldum, so this is probably some sort of Solgaleo Metagross deck. And Greninja should have a pretty easy time with a deck like this. Shadow Stitching is going to be crucial here, unless they play like a Pokemon Ranger or something like that. And I think I am playing against a pre-rotation list, so they're going to have a little bit of an advantage as far as their card pool. They are going to have things like Versus Seeker, Teammates, stuff like that. So hopefully it won't affect the matchup too much. But I'm going to Ultra Ball, and I'm not even sure if I really want to Water Duplicates because I am lacking some stuff. So I think I'm just going to play another N. So maybe if I get a Timer Ball or Frogadier or something, I should be good to go. But it looks like I actually whiffed the Frogadier. So I had the opportunity, but I chose to get more cards instead. But I can't Candy Greninja, and that's going to be really significant because I'm playing against a really ability reliant deck, and so now I can use Shadow Stitching and shut them off completely. So second turn of the game, Greninja is already out, it's already shutting off abilities, and it's going to make my opponent's deck really hard to pull off here as far as their strategy. So he's kind of stuck here. He gets a looks like a Metang, the stage 1. He's gonna Ultra Ball, so he might have a Rare Candy with something. He gets Solgaleo, so I'm guessing he's got a Rare Candy, a Solgaleo, and hopefully something like a supporter. His Tapu Lele won't work, but if he has another supporter, and it looks like he does, he's got Professor Sycamore, so he's drawing that 7 cards. He's gonna Max Potion, so interesting. He's gonna Max Potion that Cosmoem, or Cosmog, I should say, and can he really do anything else? He can't use Solgaleo's Ultra Road ability to switch. He's just kind of stuck there. So Starmie's going to come down. This is a pretty good hand for me. I can evolve to the Break. I can knock off that Choice Band, so he can't knock out Tapu Lele or Tapu Fini if I use them. And I've even got a Giant Shuriken to take an early knockout here. So notice that I am going to go for the Beldum because I think it's a bigger threat. I'm not really going to go for the Cosmog because I'd rather leave it active so I can Shuriken some more. And I use Timer Ball. I think I get double heads, but unfortunately I've only got one evolution that I really can get out on the bench. And then I've got a Sycamore. So played my hand out pretty nicely there. I'm kind of whiffing the other Froakies. I'd like to have another Froakie out just to be on the safe side, but not a huge deal. I think I've got the advantage right now. Shadow Stitching is definitely doing work because Solgaleo can't really switch. Metagross can't use the Geotech system to put energy on the board. But we are going to see a Skyla and an Ultra Ball, so we could see another Solgaleo come down here. And he's probably going to use that Soul Burst GX attack, and that's going to attach 5 energy from the deck on the board. So that means he can't use the Algorithm GX attack, but it doesn't really matter because, I mean, he's getting a whopping 5 energy on the board, so definitely worth that trade-off there. So yeah, 5 energy are going to go on the board, probably a couple on the Solgaleo, maybe a couple on the other Solgaleo or something, but he's going to have to rely on Solgaleo a bit more than he probably wants. You know, he probably wants to attack with Metagross and use like Professor Kukui to knock out these Greninjas, but that's not really going to work in this kind of matchup here. So I use Timer Ball, I get 1 heads, it's going to get me Greninja, so that's fine. And I could actually Wally into another Greninja Break if I wanted to. And I think I'm actually going to do that because my hand isn't amazing. I don't really have Froakie or anything, but I've got 2 Greninja Breaks at this point. And if you look at the math here, since I've got a couple water in the discard, I can actually double Shuriken the active, and that'll put him at 160, I think. And then I can Choice Band into the bench to Greninja and get a knockout with the Moonlight Slash. So it sounds a little confusing, but once you play the deck a little bit, you know, those are the kind of plays you could, you know, start kind of seeing after a while. So in general, I think Greninja, you know, once you start playing it, it's pretty easy to pilot, and you start kind of seeing those plays. You kind of think in terms of how much math do I need to get that knockout. But yeah, I was able to go ahead and take a knockout on Solgaleo. It's a big turn there. And so he does finally get Metagross out. He does have abilities for this turn, and he's going to use it on the Solgaleo. But keep in mind, Solgaleo's attack doesn't say discard a couple energy or discard 3 energy. You actually have to discard all energy off the Solgaleo. So he will get a knockout, but the problem is that I'm going to be able to follow up with a Shadow Stitching, and that's going to be trouble for him because he's going to lose all 4 of those energy off the board. So I don't really know if it's worth sacrificing 4 energy for 1 prize, but we're going to have to see what happens here. Maybe he plays a Pokemon Ranger. Maybe he can reuse that with Versus Seeker. That would be really, really good. And I'm trying to think what the best play is here because I've got Rescue Stretcher. I've got a lot of good stuff in the discard. I could actually pull off a Tapu Fini. I could pull it out and use Tapu Storm to get rid of Solgaleo, but again, I don't know if that's really the best thing to do. He could use Rare Candy and probably get like another one out or something. So, you know, I don't know if that's really the best play or not. But I do have Tapu Lele. I can probably get a supporter such as Sycamore, and then maybe I can just Rescue Stretcher, you know, like a Greninja line back into the deck. So that might be the play to go to. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the way to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And this is kind of the safe route because chances are off of 7 cards, you know, surely I can draw Froakie or anything else I need. So hopefully that'll work out. My deck is running a little bit thin, but not too bad here. So I've got Froakie, so at least I can hopefully get set up with another Greninja Break eventually. But for now, I mean, I think I'm just going to use those Shurikens, take some cheap knockouts, and set him up so that he basically just is stuck with the Solgaleo GX active. So with a Choice Band, Shadow Stitching is actually going to be doing 70 damage. So not exactly 2-shotting or even 3-shotting him, but it doesn't really matter in this situation. I suppose next turn I could try to pull off something with Greninja, but I think I'd still be short about 10 or 20 damage. And you can see he's putting a Psychic Energy on the Tapu Lele. So maybe he's thinking, you know, he can attack with Tapu Lele. He can't really use the GX attack because he already used Solgaleo's. So not really an option there. But he's actually going to pass again. He can't really do much. So that means I'll get another turn of being able to use that giant water shuriken. So I'm probably going to aim for the Vulpix this time, get me down to 1 prize, and then I can Shadow Stitching yet again and put him in this position where if he doesn't have anything next turn, he basically loses the game. And again, you know, this is I'm actually going against a pre-rotation deck. He's got Versus Seekers, some other cards like that, but Greninja has been able to hold its own, and Metagross is going to be one of the biggest decks. I would say the top 3 or top 5 decks in the next format, the Burning Shadows format. So seeing this just kind of tells me that Greninja is going to be just fine. It's not really going to struggle too terribly bad. Like I said, if you have that Giratina promo we're going to be going against, then I would probably recommend something like a Alolan Muck but that will require a little more testing. But as you can see, my opponent couldn't do anything. I was able to take the victory, guys. So Greninja is still as competitive as ever. Timer Ball was a very clutch card, helped me throughout the game. Didn't really have a chance to use Guzma or Acerola, but that's okay. But that shadow stitching ability combined with the giant water shuriken, just really strong. Ability lock is still just really powerful, and as you can see, Greninja does it really well. But let me know in the comments what you think about this deck. Do you think it's really good going forward? Do you think it's so-so? Is it losing a lot of stuff? But yeah, if there's anything else you guys want to see that featuring Burning Shadows cards, just let me know, and I'll be sure to read those comments and hopefully build them and test them and everything for you guys. But in the meantime, this has been Zach with Top Deck Nation. Hope you guys enjoyed this deck battle and profile, and I'll catch you guys in the next video as always.